She receives a message on her cell phone and discovers that the Lunar King is heading that way. She gets confused, wondering why this is happening right now. When the instructor asks what she is doing with the communicator, saying that if she gets distracted there, she will end up dying without even realizing it. The girl just looks and then leans in, apologizing. The girl then leaves, saying it is good for her to go back and give up on this. However, the other girl thinks that as soon as she gets the crescent moon, she will torture her to death. The instructor explains to everyone that they will receive teleportation stones. The moment they are broken, they are taken out from inside. And she explains that if they see the crescent moon awakening, they should get out right away or they will end up dying. The one is they're just thinking that as soon as the king arrives, things will get complicated. Meanwhile, the blue-haired girl thinks it's ridiculous for them to try something like this, especially since Empress Kang Yu herself tried and failed. Seeing that there are a bunch of 3-star tamers, she finds it impossible. However, she notices something strange. The girl had her back turned and turned around at the same moment. She felt something and hid behind the tree instantly, wondering why there was a master tamer in the middle of the academy. Meanwhile, people started crossing the barrier. The woman thought she had to resolve this before the Moon King arrived. It was then that the blue-haired girl called out to Yu, who was the instructor. She said that only the Moon King could do something and asked why there were so many weak people there. Yu asked why she didn't try to tame this supreme-level creature. They stared at each other, and the blue-haired girl realized the instructor seemed unaware of the other girl. That's when everyone turned around. The Moon King was arriving, and they wanted to know what he was doing there. Yu asked if he was going to try to tame the creature, and the others questioned that he might end up awakening the weapon. However, the instructor said they were ignorant, and that if he was there, it was because he was sure he could tame it. In reality, Su Lang just wanted to touch the book to see if it would release her. But as soon as his foot touched the barrier, the book updated immediately. Something called Silent Libra of Supreme Rank appeared, an extremely strong and rare attribute that lower-ranked beasts couldn't even sense. Su Lang was excited that it was something of the supreme rank, but immediately withdrew his foot. He seemed to be hesitating, and people were wondering why he stopped there. He pulled out his phone, and they were confused. Yu then asked if he had a problem, and he smiled, questioning why she let the Black Moon insects enter that place. People were surprised, and he walked in saying that from now on, the twin moons would rule that place and he would take care of everything personally. People were still shocked by the information about the Black Moon, and the blue-haired girl knew it was probably the one she had faced. People were now worried about the students who had entered, but Yu said they had the teleport stone, so they were safe. Our boy, on the other hand, was hesitant to enter because of the Silent Libra. If the Black Cult used something like that, it meant they really believed in its power. The situation was dangerous. If it were the old him, he wouldn't have had the courage. However, strangely, ever since he transmigrated, he seemed to be changing. With that, he threw himself in without hesitation, and the Black Shark guys seemed worried about the Serpent Girl. Yu said it made sense, and he mentioned he was running there to save everyone. However, the women commented that ending up like this, he wouldn't do much. The instructor noticed he was acting very strangely, and wondered why he was like that today. The guy was excited until he touched the barrier and got hit by an explosion. Everyone was startled, and he wondered what was happening. Then a girl with 50 bells tied to her appeared, saying he had no chance. From the tattoo on her thighs, the guy knew she was from the Twin Moons sect. She asked if anyone had heard His Highness's order. This girl must make a lot of noise every time she takes a step. She said that as long as she was there, no one would enter. The Black Shark wondered if she already knew about the Silent Libra. Inside, the Serpent Girl was walking around. She had been there for 10 minutes and still hadn't located the spear. The weak ones who had entered with her were already all gone. At least now, no one would interrupt the plan. Suddenly, she felt something, a tremendously powerful aura that she was sure couldn't be wrong. Her eyes shone when she finally located the spear. She was excited, thinking she hadn't made a pact even with the Silent Libra. She had saved herself for this moment and approached, saying the spear wanted her. She was sure it had rejected the others because they were born as empresses, and said the spear must be the kind that liked to be appreciated. Then, acting all cute, she said she might not be very powerful, but as a rank 6 tamer, she would certainly admire that spear a lot. With that, she ran to grab it, saying she would never treat it badly. However, as soon as her hand approached, a light radiated, and an energy prevented her from touching it. She wondered how it was possible that she was rejected. She was sure she was the most suitable person for it. So why had it gone wrong? Meanwhile, others there seemed to recognize her, and one guy said he knew she was the one who had defeated 20 people from his sect. He remembered she had even killed one of his brothers. With that, everyone said they would end her and take the Crescent Moon. However, she started laughing like a madwoman, and people were confused. She began saying she was already in a bad mood because she had been rejected, and now this bunch of trash wanted to die. With that, she summoned her creatures. A monster that was a moon-filled mist, and a creature flying atop a whale. People realized they were all high-rank beasts. She told them to stop praising and show the creatures they had, or everything would go to hell, and ordered the monster to attack. After defeating everyone's creatures, she turned to the Crescent Moon and asked if it had seen that. The power she possesses is far greater than she can imagine. However, the spear remains silent. She starts to get angry until someone says she's a piece of trash from the Black Moon. It's our boy laughing at her and all the anxiety she carries. She turns, recognizing him as the Lunar King, and asks why a 1-star is there alone, saying that even though he has an emperor-ranked creature, he himself is still very weak. Su Liang keeps laughing. He knows the girl must think he can't summon a creature because of the silent Libra, so he says that the serpent's seat is correct. A simple emperor can't do everything alone. However, the result here would remain the same with or without the Libra. He warns that before the twin moons arrive, she should break the stone and flee. The serpent girl is shocked to realize he already knew about the Libra but still entered. She doesn't know now whether to flee or to attack him. Su Liang walks calmly. All he needs to do is touch the spear once, the weapon that once managed to cut a star. When he's about to touch it, someone tells him not to think about doing that. It's the serpent girl who sends an attack. All her monsters barrage towards our boy. However, a simple wall blocks everything and she is confused. She has no idea how he did that without even summoning a beast. Our protagonist almost died of a heart attack. Even though the lake girl doesn't have attack power, at least her defense is quite strong. The serpent starts losing her mind and says enough is enough, warning that without an emperor-ranked creature, he is nothing. Abyss starts bleeding and a pentagram appears at her feet, ordering the devouring demon king to appear. Dark clouds gather in the sky and everyone trembles. Even the protagonist is afraid of that energy, and our boy knows the crescent spear can't notice the existence of that monster because of the Libra. A giant snake appears and she says he's going to be eaten now. However, our boy stands there without any expression and she doesn't understand why he seems so indifferent. Why does he seem unconcerned in front of a supreme-ranked creature? However, he's only doing this because he read on the internet that when an animal is big, you have to stare it in the eye to scare it. The girl says enough, if he won't summon, he will die, and orders the creature to attack. The monster slams into the ground and leaps at him. He stands stoically, not moving a muscle. Since the lake girl hasn't consumed all she can, he decides to leave this job to her. The entire place explodes, and when the smoke clears, he's standing there intact. He seems confident, but inside he's thanking the heavens for surviving. Considering the strength of the attack, she would need much more power to break through the barrier. She collapses to the ground, wondering if this is the legendary favor of the lunar god. Our boy leaves, saying she doesn't need to hurry. Once he gets the crescent lands, he'll deal with her. She concludes he wasn't fighting her because he was more concerned with the item, while wondering if his shield could withstand a lance attack. With that, she disables the silent Libra ability. Instantly, the lance senses the copper's presence and awakens. Someone grabs the lance and pulls it from the ground. Apparently, it has a humanoid form too. If the deer was already madness, now it even has romance with the weapon. Seeing the dangerous and the powerful girl appear, everyone starts running in panic. Feeling the energy, Su Liang hopes at least the lake girl can resist it. However, she warns in his consciousness that there's at most a 1% chance of blocking such an attack. He thinks this is madness and wonders how the snake girl planned to survive this. Looking beside him, he sees she has hidden herself among her creatures. The crescent moon then leaps towards him. He stands there knowing there's no way to escape this now. As he turns to say something, we see a few minutes ago, Kat is reported being attacked by the woman inside and questioned how the academy let someone like that slip through. The blonde finds it odd and a huge stranger is that the woman outside seems very calm. Why doesn't she seem concerned about the Lunar King's safety? Then suddenly, she also feels something. She mourns that the crescent moon seems to have been awakened. Everyone is shocked and she advises them to run because anyone staying there will die. She also senses another aura and wonders if it has something to do with the Emperor. In the midst of the battle, our boy doesn't know what to do. In 3 seconds, this attack will hit and he will die. Remembering the era of technology, he pulls out his phone in 1 second, sends a message and warns the white flower that he needs help. The crescent moon is about to hit him, and at the final moment, he reaches out. And I thought something peculiar was happening, but in reality, there was an explosion throughout the place. Everyone was thrown back and wondered if it was the Emperor's doing. They were unsure if the Lunar King had died, and in the midst of the smoke, nothing could be found. Some time later, the snake girl began to emerge from the midst of her serpent, wondering what had happened. She saw that the crescent moon was calm again, and wanted to know where the Lunar King had gone. If he had really been killed by what she awakened. She became emotional, thinking that she was the one who defeated the Lunar King. She starts off by saying that Idiot was looking at his phone at the last moment and shouts to the heavens that she was the one who defeated the great king. Excitedly, she turns to the crescent moon and declares that it's hers now. However, strangely, the item awakens again. She knows that this worn-out snake won't be able to resist. In the midst of the smoke, our boy emerges. She finds it impossible that he not only survived but doesn't seem to have been affected at all. That's when she notices a giant paw on his back and wonders what that is. The creature touches almost the clouds. It was too big for supreme rank, but if it were Emperor, everyone there would know about that thing. She starts trembling with a crystal in her hand. However, she decides it's not yet time. Even if she dies, she wants to know what the Lunar King's beast is. After all, that's the information everyone has been wanting to discover. Gradually, it reveals itself as a supreme rank creature. known as the Cloud Walker who follows the moon. Almost a direct reincarnation of the ancient goddess. The girl falls to the ground wondering how that's possible. That was a monster at least 4 or 5 times larger than her creature, because in terms of size, her creature is the largest of the black cult. And the strangest thing is the one-star tamer being able to use all the creature's power. Our boy is there, happy to have survived. He didn't imagine it would really grow so large. And the worst part is he has no idea how it teleported in a second and saved him. Moreover, the girl on its back is probably the ancestor. The white flower then tells him to dominate the crescent moon quickly or she'll be cut in half. Our boy is confused, he thought she was stronger. However, she says he must have a plan to have sent her there. That's when he remembers that being hit directly counts as body contact. This means he'll be able to see the details in the lunar book. He instructs the system to open the book, and do you remember that the last chapter ended when Su Liang grabbed that book? Since he had come into contact with the spear, he knew it would appear in the book. It says there that this is a legendary spear that has been sleeping for a long time because it lost its sheath. Because of this, it sleeps and wakes up for several years and cannot communicate with any living creature. However, our boy soon realized that this item was of supreme lunar rank. Now that he had information about the Crescent Star Spear, perhaps it wouldn't be so difficult to communicate with it. The problem is that not even this book, which should have all the information, can communicate with it. This means that this spear was born even before the Moon Goddess Palace. But this also means that almost no one has this information. Suddenly, the spear opens its eyes. At that moment, the foolish snake girl is already scared, wanting to run away. She calls for the devourer and orders it to protect her. Something seems to happen to the snake. Meanwhile, the spear glares at the white flower, who asks why it's looking at her like that. With that, the two begin to want to fight. Meanwhile, on the ground, Su Liang approaches. The girl wonders what the Lunar King is trying to do at a time like this. Any attack from that supreme aura would finish him off. However, he tells the Crescent Star Spear to submit to him. It seems to ignore him while the two continue fighting with the aura, until Su Liang simply stretches out his hand and seems to use some power. Of course, the spear, on the other hand, didn't like that. He then speaks the name Frost Flower, which is the sheath of that spear. At that moment, it gets confused and seems to look at him. And Su Liang says that in the name of the lunar goddess, he swears that within 3 years he will bring the sheath back to it. In exchange, however, it would have to guarantee him a favor. The spear remains silent, and the next second it begins to dissipate. With that, it seems to return to its true form, and now he is able to enter its territory. The snake girl wonders if that is even possible, while Su Liang calmly walks forward. The spear forms a whirlpool of water that heads towards him, and their powers seem to merge. The girl quickly realizes that the Crescent Star Spear seemed to have accepted the Lunar King. Even the white flower is impressed by this. She knew very well that with this event, the whole world would go crazy, and our boy was full of confidence. While the fool thought this was impossible, she knows of at least tens of thousands who failed to tame this spear. That's because it's extremely risky for it to accept any contract, since it can only be broken when the person who contracted it dies. That's why this spear usually only accepts people it believes to be invincible. And apparently the Lunar King was considered one of them. The girl realizes she lost the only reason she had for being there. But in this case, she decides that her death will be a message to the Black Moon cult. Once again, she orders the Devourer King to attack Su Liang. He responds that this woman had already seen too much. He didn't like having to silence people, but it was time to finish her. Man, the energy swept through, and the poor snake girl disintegrated. The boy had opened a crater in the mountain. Not even the poor guy expected this blow to be so strong. And the poor girl is there on the side, coughing up blood after her creature had been evaporated. She quickly realized that the servant in front of her wasn't of supreme rank, that at the very least it was the descendant of someone of emperor rank. However, even so, she didn't want to die like this. Passing on the information about the Crescent Star Spear was more important than anything, so she needed to escape. The whole area wasn't sealed yet, so all she had to do was stay away from the Lunar King. At that moment, the crystal in her hand, suddenly it seems to evaporate. Neither the white flower nor the fool knows what happened. The one who had stolen it was the simple, low-rank butterfly of our boy, which brought it into his hand. And he says that in a place full of high-level creatures, no one would pay attention to one of those. The poor girl is left there in disbelief that she lost the chance to escape because of a weak creature like that. Desolate, she says it was too late, but she finally realized why he was the Lunar King. Man and the white flower just gave a little blow, and the poor girl started glowing, saying it was an honor to die for the Lunar King. And that was the end of that fool. From the outside, the bell girl was calling for the Lunar King, who had just come out of that dungeon. He said the serpent's seat was dead and the protection of that place should be removed. Everyone was just paying attention and impressed that he had solved it alone. And he announces that from now on, the Crescent Star Spear would be in his care. The news that the Lunar King now had this spear shocked the entire lunar lineage. The scene shifts to the southern part of the Azure Moon sect. Someone calls for Empress Kang Yu and says something terrible has happened. The Crescent Star Spear had been tamed by the Lunar King. Kang Yu tells them not to panic as she already knows. The Lunar King is the chosen one of the moon, and that spear favors the chosen ones. The friend says, however, that the spear should belong to her, as she was born as the master of 4 stars and even has a beast of emperor rank. The girl says that's just a detail, and in the end to find out who the moon truly favors. She warns that during the moon festival, all qualified participants from this sect should withdraw. In a coastal part of the northern border, a horned demon servant girl tells someone in a cloak that the two had arrived. She asks the antelope seat if she thinks she would lose once again to the Lunar King. She responds that in a fair fight with just the 2 of them on the battlefield, she's sure she would win. And with that, she would restore the honor of the Black Moon sect. From the sea, someone says they hope the holy son of the Black Moon won't disappoint them. The blonde called Fascinating Moon warns that if they lose to the Lunar King, they will have to submit. And another one, dressed in water-like clothes called Yellow Spring, warns that no one should challenge their gods. It replies to both of them that they needn't worry, the plan would work. Now it was time for all of them to head to the Moonlight Academy. They would wait for the festival and kill the Lunar King. At the Star Museum, someone asks if the festival is really about to begin. White Flower says that you don't choose when the festival happens because it can only be initiated when the moon god is at his peak and guides them. Su Lang responds that he already knows all of that because everyone at the academy keeps talking about it. When this festival begins, all moon creature tamers must fight to see who is the strongest among them. The reward for the fights is that the lunar creatures grow at an extremely accelerated rate, and this makes the battles even more intense. The festival doesn't end until someone lights the throne or everyone gives up, and as he told everyone, he would defeat Empress Kang Yu within 3 years. Our boy is wondering why this damn body made such a ridiculous promise like that. How could an idiot like that really believe he was favored by the moon to go around saying such things? White Flower says he doesn't have to worry, as in 3 years, Kang Yu shouldn't stand a chance against him. Besides, he should know that it's extremely rare to obtain pages from the Lunar Tom. These pages allowed someone to form contracts with new creatures even after reaching their limit. Our boy is impressed, considering that he has a book of these pages, so he should be able to form an army. However, he's curious to know how people will get pages from the Tom if he has the entire Tom. She gives him a headbutt and tells him to stop worrying about it and ask her if she could stay out of that place longer. After all, if she could go out in the moonlight, it would help him much more. However, that's when she notices something. The headbutt sent the poor guy crashing into the wall. The poor guy realizes that he can't keep taking attacks from a supreme rank creature. He then sends her 100 venison recipes. Suddenly, some information about the participants starts to appear. Bai Yu is a princess with the bloodline of a human and half-tiger. Our boy is impressed. He thought she was a cat. There's another one called Bai Yao, who is the 4th princess of the Baiyu Empire, the strongest of the humans. He then sends the profiles of both directly to White Flower. She says she'll take care of the one on top, and he'll take care of the one below. Man, what do they mean by take care? Are they going to kill those poor girls? The one sulking isolated because the Lunar King took the spear, and she didn't stand a chance. The friend tells her to forget about that and go to the announcement area because there are better things to do. Over there, White Flower is just observing the girl from the clan of Saints. She had great scent but didn't seem very smart. That's when a drop falls on her nose. Since her powers are reduced in the rain, she decides to leave before her abilities weaken. However, she seems to notice something strange, and a water dragon is coming in her direction. The impact creates an explosion on the path where the 2 girls were going. The knight says he has found one of the 5 supreme targets. Then he warns the child that she has 5 seconds to summon her beasts. He doesn't like killing a summoner with a surprise attack like this. The problem is that from his shoulder, you can tell he's favored by his 7-star tamer. Even more so considering that this creature is at emperor level and it had become dangerous. Meanwhile, a girl steps out of her house saying it's raining. It was Bayur, asking why they would have to go to a training area at a time like this. That's when she suddenly notices a small butterfly in front of her. It lands on her finger, making her a little flustered. The servant tells her not to mingle with these low-level beasts, but she replies that this is nonsense and is sure even the Lunar King must play with these creatures from time to time. At that moment, someone asks if they also like talking about the Lunar King, and says they'd like to join the conversation. Clearly, it's the antelope seat coming for a confrontation. The servants have no idea who the fool is. Man Bayur, cruel as she is, calls her ugly as hell and tells her to get lost. The poor girl endures the insult, but being called ugly made her furious. She says she's so desolate she could cry. But in this case, she'll have to end her. The servants recognize her as the gazelle with the evil eye, and Bayur already knows that this is the Black Moon cult. Meanwhile, in the Academy's training area, everyone is gathered, wondering why Bayur and Bai Yao still haven't shown up. Oru tells everyone to pay attention to what she's about to say. After 1,000 years, the Moon God's festival is finally going to begin. Today, the Moon Creature Tamers will fight to be chosen by the gods, and every time they win, it will be extremely well rewarded. At that moment, someone says the sacrifices must kill each other until only one is left alive. And with that, the winner would be chosen as the true lunar god of this era. At that moment, Elru tells everyone to evacuate. However, in the very next second, an explosion occurs. She quickly realizes it was a 7-star battle technique. Unfortunately, she only managed to save her own life and is afraid of what happened to the students. But when she looks around, it seems everyone is intact. The blonde is confused, wanting to know what happened. Meanwhile, the moon creature says that it looks like her attack was absorbed. She imagines that to do something like that, it can only be the Lunar King. However, he wasn't acting, he was just hiding. Since they're in the moon battlefield, the lake shield was much more efficient. But even so, it used up 40% of the shield's energy just to save these people. However, he is surprised. It had been a long time since he had felt such anger. Suddenly, a lightning bolt cuts through the skies, and another moon creature appears. Once again, one of supreme rank and 7 stars. This means the enemy side has at least an emperor. However, the blonde yells at her friend and asks if that was necessary since he risked everyone's lives. The yellow creature says he's going to become king and kings don't care about the lives of ants. But the girl responds that this is Twin Moon's territory and they are only on a mission to hold off the vice presidents. Obviously, Oru heard that, and she asks if the blonde isn't the summoner of Fascinating Moon. 5 years ago, she went to their sect and saw her in action. So why is she attacking like this all of a sudden? A yellow blob says it seems she's one of them, and now what are they going to do? The blonde then replies that out of consideration, she'll give her a minute to evacuate all the innocent students. Anyone still there after that time will be shown no mercy. Meanwhile, the Lunar King walks by with his phone in hand and asks if they're from the Fascinating Moon sect. It was quite bold of them to attack this place without giving any warning, and he wanted to know what made the two of them believe they would get out of this alive. At the same moment, he summons the Crescent Star Spear. Obviously, everyone recognizes it. The weapon, considered supreme rank, only needs to glance to the side. He already pulls the spear and charges forward. However, Oru realizes the spear is out of control and can't distinguish between friend and foe. At this rate, this creature will end up killing everyone present. Man, the whole sky was already glowing in the same second. The explosion swept through the place, and when the smoke cleared, Oru was already lying on the ground, exhausted. She was at least surprised she had survived. In the end, the Lunar King didn't allow her to die. But those two in the middle had no chance at all. Fascinating Moon responds that even though he has that weapon, what they did was just the beginning of everything. And with a final warning, he should know that the Emperor would soon be coming for him. With that, the yellow blob begins to glow, and the girl summons a bunch of planets. Once again, the Crescent Star opens its eyes. And now Su Liang is truly in danger. He has already protected himself from 2 attacks, and now the lake shield only has 4% defense left. He knows that once this attack happens, everything will be swept away. And the worst part is he won't be able to control the spear anymore, and it might cut everyone down. The problem is, he doesn't have much choice. So the Crescent Spear sends a flurry of cuts. The two who were preparing already realize they're doomed, and the blonde is certain there's no way to defend against this. Man, that swept through the entire city. Far away, it's even dripping on the students. Suddenly, one of them asks what that is in the sky. It looked like there were 2 moons. At that moment, someone is shouting, asking why it's foolish to use the ability to create a full moon for 5 minutes. It's another blonde with ball-shaped legs, saying now they're screwed. The previous blonde apologizes, saying she did it instinctively to protect herself. But her friend says now they'll have to fight the Lunar King under the full moon. And suddenly, the two of them are startled. A giant bunny had appeared. The girl felt like it seemed to be of supreme rank, but something was wrong. And her friend says the appearance of the Crescent Spear seems to have changed as well. How are they going to fight those 2 things at the same time? The Crescent Spear prepares and slaps the bunny, ripping it in half. Man. The other 2, confused, don't know why the crazy spear attacked its ally. But at that moment, it's already turning to look at the 2 of them. Meanwhile, outside the academy, a bunch of servants are angry, not knowing what to do. And the antelope says she doesn't think she can last another minute. Then she calls for the gazelle with evil eye, who unleashes a barrage of lasers. The summoned creatures were all useless. Unable to do anything, they fell to the ground, destroyed. Bai Yao then summons the eagle dragon, which appears gigantic in front of her. The antelope says it took her too long to summon a supreme ranked creature. It was interesting, but it was also easily being crushed. The servant then summons a tiger and tells her to flee to the edge, where she might be rescued. However, the antelope seemed bored, asking if that was all they knew. Once again, the gazelle prepared an attack. And man, this time it was the end for the servants as she struck. Even the poor girl who was trying to escape fell, crushed to the ground. She got up, desperate, already knowing that this was the end for the poor girl. However, she was crushing our boy's little butterfly, which rose up and faced her head on. And strangely, out of nowhere, the evil gazelle seemed to retreat. Even the girl's legs became shaky. She had no idea how a shimmering butterfly had gotten there. Bai Yao is confused as to why the antelope is so terrified of that shimmering butterfly. But it seems to have saved her. Even though she doesn't understand it, this was her chance to escape. And with that, the antelope falls to the ground, saying that, unfortunately, she wouldn't be able to complete her part of the operation. Meanwhile, Bai Yor and Su Jing are lying on the ground. The water creature is doing the countdown, and White Flower wonders if the Water Monarch is there too, because the problem would be if she appeared and that guy got involved. The guy then says they've had enough time, and it's a shame they're going to die like this. A vortex begins to appear in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, the two of them are being drowned. Some clouds appear, and the two begin to float. The knight knows he hasn't heard of such powers, so there's an unknown variable. The two turn around, and the guy asks who she is. Obviously, it's White Flower, and all of her style on her little cloud as well. So Jing asks why that supreme creature was helping them, but she has no choice but to save them, since she promised the Lunar King she would help him. The knight then introduces himself as a supreme-ranked creature, called the Emperor of Autumn. White Flower looks to the side and asks if that little guy named Duangantu can come along. The Emperor looks a little confused by the way she treated this guy, and says that he wouldn't appear unless it was to fight someone of an extremely high rank. She says in that case, it's perfect. She likes to beat up the weak and run from the strong. The guy gives her a slap, telling her to shut up. At the same moment, a block of water rises from the ground, and the poor girl begins to drown. However, suddenly she appears above the block, and her body is enveloped in a purple light. The Autumn Knight says it seems she's a bodiless creature like him. Since that's the case, he was going to use that. Suddenly, a vortex appears above her, which begins pulling her up. The entire place explodes, and he seems confident that she has died. But that's when he notices something strange. There were two moons in the sky, so he knew someone had done something unauthorized. In a region like this, full of lunar creatures, he was at a great disadvantage. But he was lucky to kill the enemy so quickly. It would be good for him to hear an explanation as to why someone did something so foolish. However, a long-haired woman appears, asking where he's going. He turns around immediately. And folks, here comes the real danger of the story. White Flower says she didn't even need a full moon to easily finish him off. Man, but the knight, desperate, jumps and asks what she said. But in a second, he notices something strange. A gigantic crystal horn had pierced him right through the middle. He was confused because a power like that was above the supreme realm. The only type of creature that can do that is something that is a direct descendant of an emperor. And not even he, in the supreme realm, stood a chance. White Flower tells him to know that she didn't want to take advantage of the full moon. The guy begins to disappear, calling for his master, asking him to be careful. With that, the creature evaporates in front of everyone, and White Flower wonders if she drew too much attention. Maybe she did. Given all the destruction happening everywhere, she knows that Guy's leader must be around too. The problem is, she's not quite sure what to do next. 3 minutes earlier in the training area, the crescent star was in the sky, and everyone had already been beaten. Clearly, the poor girl wasn't sparing anyone, until once again, she felt something. The little bunny she had cut was reconstituting itself. As long as it was under the lunar moon, its regeneration would be extremely accelerated. However, the falling star once again charged forward, but now the little bunny managed to defend itself. They love these explosions that sweep through everything, leaving nothing behind in this place. Meanwhile, the Black Moon people are trying to avoid being seen by the Twin Moon group. The girl questions and he tells her to stop underestimating him. He had information about an agent, and that place is extremely secure, until something exploded nearby. The fight between the two had landed right in front of them, and they began to wonder how the Lunar King had discovered them. He tells them to calm down. Maybe it wasn't him. Suddenly, the bunny comes with its ear to its mouth, and the king emerges from inside. Everyone is scared and confused. Su Lang immediately asks what the Black Moon and Spring Path people are doing there. At that moment, the water girl is terrified because she has no chance against the Lunar King under a full moon. He then says that he was just there listening to these people and had no intention of fighting her. However, the other one shouts, declaring that he's there to declare war. Su Liang just stares at him and asks what this business of declaring war is about. The guy warns that as soon as the festival starts, he'll destroy all the legacy he has. That's because 3 years ago, the Black Moon Sect's base was completely destroyed. That too was caused by the Lunar King, who at the time also looked at them with the same gaze, as if he were superior to everyone looking at ants. This, he says, is the true nature of the Lunar King. However, Su Lang is confused as he has no memory of the guy who came before him doing anything like that. But now he also has to deal with the Crescent Star, so he'll let it go. And he says that even though an ant's effort is annoying to watch, he'll give them a chance. But they'll have to pay the price for provoking him. He'll send the Crescent Star to hunt them down. If they manage to survive, then he'll grant them a request. He then calls the star, and immediately it charges forward. Once again, an explosion sweeps through everything. And about 10 minutes later, they are lying on the ground, saying the force of that thing was overwhelming. The water girl says it's better if they start avoiding the Twin Moon's order, especially since, considering the power Su Liang showed, it wouldn't stand a chance. For now, they'll have to hunt for new beasts and see if they find something else. Su Liang realizes that this fight has destroyed the academy. What he doesn't understand is how the falling star defeated so many supreme ranked 7-star creatures like that. It was so strong that he was winning against those creatures without even trying. Suddenly, he hears someone crying and approaching, who throws herself at the boy. It's White Moon complaining that she had to fight against a 7-star master. She says she almost got beaten up and it was extremely scary. If it weren't for her, the entire academy would have been flooded. And then she realizes she forgot to revert to her deer form. But our boy just pats her and says everything's fine. She's supposed to accompany him to the Twin Moon Order because he has something to deal with. She wonders if his family will be there, and then she gets a little confused, wondering if they're moving too fast. Even though she's embarrassed, asking if this isn't too soon, she's happy. The scene shifts to the floating island of the Twin Moon Order. Down below, Kang Yu's sect is watching, saying it's really impressive. But the girl named Shoujiu tells them to remember why they're there. The treasures of the great emperor of the eastern region were there in the Twin Moon sect. And no matter what happens today, they're going to take everything. But when they arrive, they're confused. That sect looks more like a city. She starts wondering how much money these bastards make per day. Meanwhile, there's a boy eating a skewer over there. It's Su Liang, wanting to know what a southern tamer is doing in this place. White Flower recognizes her and warns that the girl's name is Xiaoju. It's good to be careful because she's a fan of Kang Yu, who is his enemy and also talks badly about him. Or maybe this is the perfect chance to trap her and make her apologize. Our boy wonders if she's trying to beat up the girl over internet comments. He tells her to forget it and asks if there's anything else she'd like to do. She thinks for a second and sees a sign for an eating challenge. She says she wants to participate, and our boy feels a little embarrassed. But considering how much she's been helping him, it seems he won't be able to say no. The guy then shouts that the registrations are almost full. At that moment, Xiaoju approaches and starts signing up. She knew there were some good prizes, so she wanted to join. Upon hearing that, our boy gets interested. The first prize would be Essence Fluid, and the second prize, a box of face masks. Our boy is shocked by the difference between the first and second place prizes, and he knows that this essence is extremely valuable. However, he's confused about why they're giving away something like that in a competition like this. She says that, as far as she knows, he organized this as revenge against another organization that was against them in the past. That's because they started collecting various butterfly-type creatures, which led to a competition between the two sects. As always, he has no idea what happened, especially since that guy's memories seem all mixed up. However, considering the prize, he was interested. Even more so because there would be other beasts, and with that, he could reveal more pages from the book. A girl then introduces herself and welcomes everyone who would participate. However, everyone was hesitant to go up against Xiaoju. The girl announces that each summoner could bring 2 beasts. However, they should be careful because only supreme-level creatures could handle the spiciness. The people then start serving the dishes, and most of the low-level beasts already give up just from the smell. Obviously, White Flower is eager, and Xiaoju tells her friends not to bother because she wasn't going to lose anyway. She summons a pink butterfly. She knew that even here in the Twin Moon Order, this was a supreme rank and rare creature. However, she saw the guy across from her and wondered why he brought a mid-rank beast to compete. Apparently, he didn't know that if it ate too much of that item, it would end up dying. Su Liang noticed she seemed very determined to win. He would need to summon another creature, but it couldn't be the Crescent Star. If that was the case, he had a certain idea. The girl on the other side didn't understand who he was. The announcer then informs them they would have 10 minutes and tells them to begin. The pink butterfly grabs the first essence and swallows it all at once. Meanwhile, the other creatures, poor things, couldn't absorb it. White Flower was calmly eating one after another, and Xiaoju wondered if it was a supreme-ranked creature. However, it was ridiculous for him to insist like that, as he had no chance of winning this. 3 minutes later, most of the creatures had already fainted. Her butterfly was already full after eating 30 pieces. She asked it to keep going, but the poor thing was clearly not in its best state. She then wondered what that guy was doing. White Flower was eating calmly. The boy told her to stop trying so hard. Xiaoju was confused as to how that creature showed no signs of exhaustion. To win this, she would need 2 supreme-ranked beasts, but she couldn't keep both of them out for 5 minutes. The problem was that she wanted that Emperor Essence, so she wasn't going to give up. So she calls for the Green Moon Spirit. A creature appears on her back. It grabs the dish and starts devouring everything. The two were startled, and White Moon said that Beast would get diarrhea if it ate like that. Xiaoju was struggling to keep the creature in the field, but was certain she would win. The monster had already consumed 72, while White Flower had only 34. However, our boy felt that the time had come, and he called for the moon in the lake. A vortex formed above the dish. Everyone was confused, wondering what had happened. All the food there disappeared in an instant. Poor Xiaoju said that was impossible. However, the announcer said the results were in. Those two were the winners. The fool was devastated, not knowing what to do, and the announcer told Su Liang to follow her as she would deliver the reward. However, that was a little suspicious. Or maybe not. She just recognized that he was the Lunar King and handed over the essence. Our boy realized he had been recognized. She says that many already know he has a white deer pet. The item he receives is the essence of an extremely rare creature. He just needed to come into contact with it and take a sniff from the bottle. With that, the girl asked what happened. What he releases is an Emperor-class Sky-type creature, the pink butterfly. He unlocks 50 chances to capture a new creature, and now just by seeing a lunar creature, he will be able to unlock the icon. Although we have taken this time to pamper White Flower, in the end, it was worth it. He then heads to the headquarters of the Twin Moon sect. Walking around and seeing the size of the structure, he realizes that this is the true respect of the title of Lunar King. Wherever he goes, everyone bows, until he crosses a portal. Upon opening his eyes on the other side, he sees a girl in the sky sitting on a moon. White Flower recognizes that as a supreme being, and Su Liang says that she's the one who controls the entire northern region. That was the curved moon of the blue sea. She turns around and says that apparently the Lunar King has finally changed his mind. She says that the festival was delayed by 3 years because of the answer he gave to Kang Yu. However, this is the kind of thing the older folks don't usually like. Our boy once again realizes that the promises of that cursed predecessor weren't helping. But he says he's there exactly because the Lunar Festival seemed about to begin. However, before that, he had a question. How is he going to win in this fight with the emperors? She questions why he's talking about this since he's strong. However, he responds, explaining that the Black Moon cult people will surely try to interfere with him. She tells him to stop joking because it's not worth wasting thoughts on such trivial matters. He realizes that no one knows he only won that day because a full moon suddenly appeared in the sky. Suddenly, a ring appears in front of him, and she informs him that it is a relic of the Northern Moon God. When he puts this ring on, the festival will finally begin. With that, the ring starts tapping on his finger. The poor guy realizes that the woman has a lot of confidence in him, and there's no way to avoid it. So he accepts with no other choice. Suddenly, a bunch of galaxies appear where he was standing. The representative had been chosen, and the ceremony would begin. However, the system detects something and says it will try again. The system explains that because he has the moon dome, he can choose to hide his identity in the festival. Su Liang wonders where he was teleported to. The system allows him to change his name, gender, and even appearance. However, the ranking couldn't be hidden, since the focus of this test was to make sure no one knew who he was. He would have to summon a creature that no one had seen before. So he chooses the curved moon of the blue sea. Suddenly, he is teleported again, and finds himself in a room with 3 thrones. From one of the doors, a girl enters, saying the moon would not fall, and the night would now become eternal. She sits on one of the chairs. Another girl enters, saying it's been a long time since she saw Miss Shogetsu, but she's excited as the festival is about to begin. Shogetsu seems not to respond, and a short girl approaches the last chair. She looks like she's dying of sleep. The girl with pink hair says it's been a long time since she saw the Queen of the West. The poor girl is struggling to climb the little steps, and as soon as she reaches the throne, she falls back asleep. But then another girl enters. Wait, weren't there only 3 thrones? Where is this one going to sit? It seems she was looking for a man because she saw only women and got angry. Shogetsu wants to know why an ice creature is at the Moon Festival, saying it would only ruin the purity of the place. The same girl responds that she has a relic of the moon gods, which is why she's there. Now, only one more person was missing, and the ice girl questions why he's taking so long. Another girl says the northern throne is usually occupied by the Lunar King, and the little girl says the Lunar King this time is a kid who caused a mess 3 years ago, until Claude appears. The poor women all get startled, and here comes our boy pulling this kind of stunt. Obviously, they're all confused, since they knew what the Lunar King was supposed to look like. Out of nowhere, Su Liang had been turned into a gorgeous woman. Or maybe it wasn't him, right? We hope not. Here she sits in the chair, and the women wonder why it's not the Lunar King there.